My parents said I wasn't worth their effort after I came out, so I vanished. Built a life and watched them cry on Facebook years later. I'm a 17-year-old guy, and last year, I came out as gay. I didn't plan it like some big speech or emotional moment. I just couldn't keep living like I was pretending to be someone I wasn't. It happened on a Wednesday night over dinner. My hands were shaking so badly, I nearly dropped my fork. I told them quietly, "I'm gay." Just like that, my dad stared at me like I'd just confessed to killing someone. My mom's eyes flicked up, then down to her plate, and she didn't say a word. For a few seconds, there was just the sound of the clock ticking above the fridge. I thought maybe they needed a moment to process it, to adjust. Maybe they'd say something supportive, or even just neutral. Instead, my dad shoved his chair back so hard it scraped the tile. "You think this is something to be proud of?" he spat. "An embarrassment to this family." My heart was pounding. I looked to my mom. Still nothing. Her mouth was tight, and she just started cutting into her chicken like I hadn't said anything at all. I slept in my room that night with the door locked for the first time ever. The next morning, I came down hoping it was a bad dream, but my dad barely looked at me. My mom had made pancakes for my younger sister, not for me. She didn't even ask if I wanted any. That silence kept stretching. A week then, too, my name stopped being spoken in the house. I became this shadow, present but ignored. One night I came downstairs for water and heard my dad on the phone in the den. He was talking to my aunt, I think. His voice was flat, cold. He's not worth the effort anymore. I stood there in the dark, holding a glass, feeling like I didn't exist. After that night, something in the air shifted. It wasn't yelling or drama anymore. It was worse than that. It was quiet, cold, empty, suffocating quiet. My mom stopped setting a plate for me at dinner. My dad stopped acknowledging my presence at all. I would walk into the room, and it was like I hadn't, like I was made of fog. My sister Lauren didn't say much either. She'd look up from her phone, glance at me like I was an awkward guest, and go right back to scrolling. On my birthday, I came downstairs, hoping maybe they'd at least say something. There was a chocolate cake on the counter, Lauren's favorite kind. She beamed as my mom lit the candles. I stood there confused until I realized what was happening. It wasn't for me. It was for Lauren's promotion to cheer Captain Day threw her a party on my birthday. That night, I ate leftover pizza alone in the kitchen. No candles, no card, nothing. Just me and the fridge light. School was the only place I felt semi-human. But even there, I carried the weight of pretending. Pretending my family was fine. Pretending I wasn't slowly shrinking into nothing. I stopped inviting friends over. I stopped talking in class. I stopped being. One evening, I came home from work just a minimum wage, job bagging groceries, and went into the garage to grab a hoodie from the laundry basket. That's when I saw it, all my clothes, stuffed into 2 trash bags, labeled donation. No one said a word to me about it. "No, we're cleaning out your closet." "No, we thought you didn't want this." Just black plastic bags on the cold concrete floor. I stood there for 5 minutes, hands trembling, staring at my own existence, packed up like garbage. I got an email from the university I'd been accepted into. They said my financial aid package was incomplete. My parents had withdrawn the FAFSA. I hadn't even known they could do that. But they did. And they didn't even tell me by the time senior year started. The differences between how my parents treated me and how they treated Lauren were blinding. She got driving lessons, a new iPhone, and my dad personally walked her through every college application. Meanwhile, I was taking double shifts at the grocery store just to afford notebooks and a bus pass. One night, I came home exhausted, my apron still smelling of stale bread, and saw Lauren at the kitchen table. My dad was quizzing her on practice-sat questions, and my mom was making her tea like she was royalty. I stood in the doorway holding my cracked secondhand phone, waiting for someone to notice me. No one did. Later, when my mom was alone in the kitchen, I finally asked, "Why do you help her with everything but not me?" My voice cracked halfway through. She didn't even look up from wiping the counter. "Well," she said coolly, "at least she didn't shame us." Those words sliced through me. My stomach went hollow. I wanted to scream, but my throat shut tight. Lauren must have heard because she walked in and gave me this pitying look, like I was some stray dog. "It's not fair," she murmured, "but you know how they are." She didn't defend me. She never did. She just let it happen because it was easier to stay the golden child. That night, lying awake in my room, I could hear them laughing downstairs. Planning Lauren's graduation trip, my ceiling felt like it was pressing down on me. I started to wonder if maybe they were right, maybe I was the problem. A few days later, one of my old teachers messaged me on Facebook. "Your parents told me you moved away voluntarily. Are you okay?" My heart dropped. They were already rewriting my life, erasing me before I'd even left. By the time winter rolled around, I was running out of ways to pretend I was fine. Every night, I lay awake rehearsing speeches, imagining some way I could make my parents see me again. Finally, I decided to write it all down. I spent hours on that letter, pages of shaking handwriting telling them I still loved them, that I needed them, that I didn't want to be a ghost in my own home. I wrote about how scared I was, how lost. I begged for even the smallest sign that they still cared. I folded it carefully, slid it into an envelope, and left it on the kitchen counter with their morning coffee mugs. When I came home from school that day, my father was sitting at the table. The letter was in his hands, ripped in half, then ripped again, pieces scattered across the table like snow. He looked up at me with that same flat expression I'd learned to dread. "You made your choice," he said, his voice low and final. "Live with it." My throat burned. "Dad, I'm still your son." He stood and walked past me without another word. That night, while the house slept, I packed the only things that still felt like mine: 2 pairs of jeans, some shirts, a few photos from before everything fell apart. I slid the zipper shut on the small suitcase and stood there for a moment, waiting for a door to open, for someone to whisper, "Don't go." No one came. I stepped out into the freezing night, the sound of my own footsteps the only goodbye. Streetlights hummed above me. My breath came out in white clouds. My phone battery was dead. Hours later, shivering and numb, I found a shelter downtown. The smell of disinfectant and damp blankets hit me as soon as I walked in. I lay down on a thin cot, clutching my suitcase like a lifeline, and finally let the sobs come, muffling them into the pillow so no one would hear. The shelter smelled like bleach and hopelessness. I stayed quiet that first morning, hugging my suitcase at my feet like a shield. People came and went. Some muttered to themselves. Others stared blankly into space. No one made eye contact. I kept my head down until this older guy sat down across from me with a cup of gas station coffee and said, "You look like you ran out of road." His name was Keith, maybe late 40s. Kind face, worn denim jacket, with frayed cuffs. I tried to shrug it off, pretend I wasn't desperate, but I must have looked like hell. He didn't press. Just offered me the second half of his breakfast sandwich and said, "You remind me of myself, years ago." I found out later he was gay too. He'd been through the same thing, kicked out, disowned, homeless, at 19, he said. "This world doesn't end at your parents' front door." Trust me, he let me crash on his couch for a few nights. Then a few weeks. He had a tiny studio apartment above a pawn shop that smelled like incense and old books. I expected judgment, questions, conditions, but all he ever said was, "You get up, you try again." That's the deal. He helped me get a job bussing tables at the diner where he used to cook. It was greasy and loud, but I was grateful for every dollar. Keith printed out GED worksheets and taped them to the fridge. When I'd give up halfway through, he'd smirk and say, "You quitting again? Or are you going to learn quadratic equations like a badass?" For the first time in forever, someone believed in me. Not because of what I could do for them, but just because, the night I passed my last online exam, he handed me a cupcake with a single candle and said, "I'm proud of you, kid." That's when I decided I was going to college. I didn't care how long it took or how hard it got. I was going to build a life they'd never be able to erase. I was at the library, sitting at one of the public computers between 2 old men who smelled like cigarettes and dust, trying to update my resume. My hands were still sticky from the syrup at the diner, but I didn't care. I was scrolling absent-mindedly through Facebook when a thumbnail stopped me cold. It was a picture of my parents standing in front of a flower, arrangement shaped like a cross. My dad's arm around my mother, both of them looking down. Tragic. Above it, mourning our son who chose a dark path. Please respect our privacy during this difficult time. For a second, I thought maybe one of my cousins had died. Then I saw the comments. "I'm so sorry for your loss. He's in a better place now, sending prayers." My own name was in the hash, my birth date, my photo from when I was 12. They hadn't just erased me. They'd killed me publicly. I felt my mouth go dry. The cursor on the screen blinked, but I couldn't. People around me typed, coughed, sneezed, but the library went silent in my ears. I clicked through the album. There was even a staged memorial photo from our church. Keith came up behind me with 2 vending machine coffees. "You okay, kid?" he asked. I turned the screen toward him. He stared for a long time, jaw tight, and said softly, "They just told the whole world you're dead." I didn't even feel angry, just numb. Something inside me shut off. I clicked log out on every account tied to my old name. I opened a new email address. I filed a form to legally change my last name. It was like peeling off burned skin, painful but freeing. That night, back at Keith's apartment, I sat on the floor with my laptop and deleted the last picture of my family from my phone. Watching it vanish felt like slamming a door for the final time. The day I got my acceptance letter to community college, I cried harder than I ever did the night I left home. It wasn't even a big school, just a local place with beat-up classrooms and fluorescent lights that made your skin look gray. But to me, it was everything. It meant I wasn't dead. Not to myself, not to the world. I was still here. I juggled classes with double shifts at the diner. I kept my head down, took every open shift, and studied in the break room during my 15-minute lunches. Keith would slip me $5 bills sometimes and lie, saying he found them in the couch. He made pasta every Sunday night, his version of a family dinner, and called it Survivor Supper. He became the dad I didn't know I needed. When I broke down during finals week, crying over a failed econ quiz, he sat beside me and said, "No one taught you how to survive, kid. But look at you still, doing it anyway." I started going to therapy after a social worker at school suggested it. At first, I hated it. Talking made everything feel real. But slowly, week by week, the fog started to lift. I learned that surviving isn't just about food and shelter. It's about letting go of voices that were never yours to carry. I made friends, real ones. I fell in love quietly, tentatively with someone who didn't flinch when I said I was thrown away for being gay. Eventually, I started a blog. Just a small corner of the internet where I wrote about family estrangement, healing, queerness, survival. I never used my real name, but the words were mine. All of them, one night, I posted an entry titled, "When your family has a funeral for you while you're still alive." I closed my laptop and went to bed. The next morning, my inbox had over 3,000 notifications. It had been 3 years since I last saw her name light up my screen. Lauren. The message popped up in the middle of the night. Just one line. "Can we talk?" I stared at it for a long time, heart pounding. Part of me wanted to ignore it. Another part, one I hated, admitting still existed, felt this sick flutter of hope. Maybe she wanted to make things right. Maybe she'd seen the post. Maybe she remembered I was still her brother. I typed, "Sure." My hands were trembling. She replied instantly, "They're not doing well. Mom's been in and out of the hospital. Dad's not sleeping. They keep saying they wish things were different." I blinked. "Are they sorry?" 3 dots appeared. Then disappeared. Then came back. Finally, "They don't think they did anything wrong." I stared at the words like they were in another language. She added, "But they miss you. They want you to come home." Home. That word hit me like a slap. That house stopped being home the night they told the world I was dead. I asked, "Why now?" She said, "Because they need help. I can't take care of everything alone." So that was it. Not an apology. Not a reckoning. Not love, just need. I could feel the walls inside me slamming shut again. The same ones I'd spent years trying to tear down in therapy. Brick by heavy brick. It was like no time had passed. Like all the healing I'd done could be erased with a single text. My thumb hovered over the keyboard. I thought of Keith. I thought of the blog readers who'd messaged me saying I gave them hope. I thought of the version of me I had to bury just to survive. Then I did nothing. I didn't block her. I didn't reply. I left the message unread. This part of my story is the one I almost never tell. It was months after I'd left home, before Keith found me at the shelter. Winter had bled into spring, but the cold never left my bones. I was living in a Pebblethweek motel off the highway. The carpet smelled like mold and cigarettes, and the walls were thin enough to hear the couple next door fighting every night. I'd lost my job at the grocery store. My phone was dead. My last $20 bill went to the room. There was no plan left, no one to call. That night, I sat on the edge of the bed with a cheap pen and a scrap of lined paper from the motel notepad. My hand was shaking so hard, the letters came out crooked. I started writing a note addressed to whoever finds me. It wasn't long, just a few sentences. An apology. An explanation. A way to make it neat for strangers. The TV flickered in the corner, casting blue light over the paper. I could smell the bleach from the bathroom, sharp and sour. I kept thinking about how easy it would be. Just stop. Finally, stop. I don't know why, but halfway through, something cracked open inside me. I stared at the words, at my own name on the page, and thought, they threw me away. I don't have to finish their job. I ripped the note into tiny pieces and flushed it down the toilet. My face was wet, but I wasn't crying. My chest felt like it was on fire. I walked outside barefoot into the parking lot, breathing hard, feeling the gravel cut into my feet. The night air was freezing, but it woke me up. I didn't have a plan yet, but I had one thought pounding in my skull. They left me for dead. I saved myself. I made the burner account the same night I tore up that suicide note. Different name, no photos, just enough to slip into the edges of their lives without being seen. At first, it was pure curiosity, but soon it became a ritual. Every night after my shifts, I'd sit on Keith's couch with my laptop and scroll. What I found didn't look like the glossy, happy family they'd sold to the world. My mom had started doing Facebook Lives, trying to look cheerful while selling handmade crafts. But I could see the tremble in her hands, the way her eyes darted off screen like she was about to cry. The living room behind her looked bare, pictures gone from the walls. Furniture rearranged. My dad posted cryptic Bible verses at 2 a.m. Lost blessings are hard lessons. We reap what we sow. Friends commented with praying hands. He never answered. Relatives kept asking, "Where is he? Is he okay?" My parents always replied with the same script. He moved away. He wanted distance. Respect his choice. But their mask was slipping. I could see it in every pixel, their perfect story, cracking. The weight of the funeral lie pressing down. I'd lean back in the chair and watch the screen glow blue on my hands, a strange mix of satisfaction and sadness flooding me. They weren't unraveling because I was gone. They were unraveling because the lie they built had become too heavy to carry. One night, I refreshed and saw a new post on my dad's timeline. Just text, no picture. "We wish we'd done things differently." The words were like static. My heart pounded, but my face stayed blank. I didn't comment. I didn't even screenshot it. I just sat there in the dark, watching the people who buried me alive finally dig their own hole. For months, I watched silently, scrolling, lurking, biting my tongue. Every post, every cryptic verse, every pitying "pray for us" comment. I told myself I'd never speak. I was gone, and they had buried me. But one night, after a long shift, I opened my burner account and stared at my dad's latest post. Another picture of them at church, captioned, "God heals all wounds." The comment section full of people telling them how strong they were, how tragic their loss was, how noble their suffering. Something in me snapped. I clicked the comment box and typed with shaking hands. "You said I wasn't worth the effort. You were wrong." Just that. No name, no context. I hit post before I could stop myself. At first, nothing. Then the notifications started. Likes, replies, shares. By morning, it had been screenshot and reposted in my hometown group. Old classmates tagged each other. People whispered, "Is that him? Is he alive?" Some defended me. They did him dirty. Others went after my parents publicly, demanding answers. "You had a funeral for your own son. What's wrong with you?" My inbox filled with messages from people I hadn't spoken to in years. Teachers, neighbors, even the youth pastor. "We're so sorry. We're proud of you." We didn't know. I didn't reply to a single one, but for the first time since I'd left that house, I felt seen, not pitied, not erased. Seen. That night, while I was wiping down tables at the diner, my phone buzzed. A new message request. No name, just a number I recognized instantly. I opened it, 3 words, "Please come home." I stared at the screen, heart pounding. the rag still dripping in my hand. I never replied to that message. 3 words: please come home. It sat in my inbox for weeks. I read it once, then again, then I deleted it. Not out of anger, but because I didn't need it anymore. I used to dream about that moment. The apology, the open door, the second chance, but by the time it came, I had already built a life that didn't depend on their permission to exist. A few months later, I got an email from a journalist at a major LGBTQ+ publication. They had seen my blog post, the one about the funeral land, asked if I'd be willing to tell my story. Under my real name, I hesitated. That name felt heavy, but I realized I wasn't ashamed anymore. I wasn't hiding. I had survived the kind of grief most people never even talk about, so I said yes. We met at a tiny cafe, and I told her everything from the day I came out to the night I almost ended my life, to the moment I decided to live louder than their silence. She wrote it all down. No edits, no filters, just the truth. When the article went live, it exploded. Thousands of messages from people who had been cut off, erased, silenced by their own families. One message read, "I was going to give up. Then I found your story." That's when I realized I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was healing. On my 25th birthday, Keith cooked his famous garlic butter pasta and invited everyone I loved. People I met through college, the blog, the diner, my real family, my chosen family. They brought homemade cards and candles and loud, unapologetic laughter. I looked around the table that night and didn't feel hollow. I felt full. They lost a son. I found myself